I don't know if you read Chip Johnson's
I'll come back to you.
column this morning, but his contention is that, I don't want to mischaracterize what he wrote, but that you basically ignored Robert Bob's recommendations, and that the council now wants to implement Robert Bob's recommendations. And I just wanted to know if you wanted to comment in response to that.
Well, first of all, you should feel free to assess Mr. Johnson, because I'm not sure he's capable of assessing his own conclusions, and frequently comes to erroneous conclusions based upon false information, all right? And that's just fact of life. Number two, no, I do not read Chip Johnson, if that was your second question. The third point is this, that nothing could be further from the truth. One of Chip Johnson's recommendations was that we bring in top, I'm going back to Robert Bob. Robert Bob's recommendation was that we put together the best possible staff that we could. I have made a number of significant changes in our administrative staff at the cabinet level, working with Dan Lindheim as my city administrator. Number two, we have now put together what I think is a stellar financial team and budget team. And these are extraordinarily diligent people who work very, very hard and have done a tremendous job. Number three, we have maintained the integrity, as I said earlier, of public safety. And we've worked very diligently to implement a strategy that is indeed working. Parenthetically, just several days ago, I was in a conference call and also had one police chief here present in this room with a number of public safety experts and police chiefs from around the country to talk with me about what it is we wanted, what did I view as the important characteristics of the police chief in order for these sort of wise persons in this field to help me figure out the best possible candidates that are out there. And I think we're going to end up with 3 or 4 really extraordinarily stellar stars in the field of policing that have history as a police chief, so it's not on-the-job training. It's someone who has a demonstrated track record, and so we're going to get to that point. I would suggest that if you go through the report, I think you will come to exactly the opposite of Mr. Johnson, because if you do the work, then you will find that most of the recommendations, the solid recommendations that were placed on the table, they've actually been implemented. And I have no sense of what it means by the city council picking this up, because we've already done that. We put an appropriate team together. We've dealt with our budgeting issues. Clearly, we have put in place a team that could look several years into the future because we wanted to be prospective with a 5-year plan. But here we are with an unprecedented economic meltdown, and you have to play the hand that's given you at that particular moment. So that's the hand that we had to play. But that has nothing to do with them not being in place, because they are indeed in place. And the recommendation with respect to regularized meetings that facilitate communication, that's ongoing.
Mr. Mayor, just to be clear, is there anything in the council's proposed budget that you will flat out not accept?
The only area that I would want to sit down and have a real honest conversation with them about is how we handle our separation of authority and providing us on the executive side of government the freedom to make appropriate executive decisions that we think are in the best interest of community, and providing services going forward and being willing to be held accountable for that. With respect to all of the other parts of the budget, which is 99.9%, because when you're down to a few $100,000 in the mayor's office, you're really talking about minuscule pieces of money. And so it's not the big picture. In terms of the big picture, there's you know, one could debate this item versus that item, but there are no good choices here, and so we should join ranks and unite with each other and go forward, you know, as a team in that regard. That's the only one area, and as I said, I don't think it's worthy of us getting into a battle about. My hope would be that we could deal with each other with dignity and with integrity, and that they would deal with me the same way I'm attempting to deal with them, which is to respect them as a co-equal branch of government, give them the opportunity to make the decisions that impact them, give us a dollar figure, and then let us operate within the framework of the dollar figure. That maximizes my flexibility, because at the end of the day, this is a budget item, and what you want to do is close a budget hole. But it seems to me as a legislator, you don't want to end up micromanaging on the administrative side. So I think if everybody plays their role, we could work this out.
Mr. Mayor, city workers, besides police and fire, may be shaking in their boots because they don't feel any protection. If you're a police officer, we know that you need them in Oakland. If you're a firefighter, we know that we need them. What can you say to city workers who may be afraid right now that they're going to be cut because they're pretty vulnerable, because, you know, in some ways they're not needed as like police and fire?
Well, first of all, let me back up. At this particular juncture, everybody's on the table. And that was the point that I was trying to make, was that in the past, we have held sworn personnel, we've held them harmless. This year, because of the extraordinary nature of the deficit, the size of the deficit, and the potential growth of the deficit, we've had to look at sworn police officers. Not a comfortable matter, because as I said, I made public safety due north. We worked hard to get to 800 and some police officers. It would be counterintuitive on my part to want to gratuitously cut the police. But at this particular point, I think one thing that we can say to our non-sworn personnel is that we're dealing with this in an even-handed way, okay? And that a large portion of the money is over on the other side. Again, as I said, you know, I've taken several opportunities to speak with my colleagues in Washington from the Justice Department on this matter, trying to turn over every conceivable opportunity to see if we could end up saving us, you know, saving the 140 police officers. So I have to remain optimistic and continue to go, you know, be gung-ho about trying to get that done. So I think for the first time, our non-sworn personnel can look and see that no one is being held harmless at this point, that everybody's at the table.
We have one, two more questions from those
Let me
who
just,
haven't asked questions.
I can come back to you.
Mr. Mayor, do you support passage of the 4 measures on the ballot this summer in the city special election?
Yes, I do, because I recognize that we're in significant economic downturn. And politicians, more often than not, do not like to engage in revenue enhancement issues. But at this particular point, we have no option. We have no alternative. As I said before, in the course of my 30-some years in elective office, I've never met anyone who wanted to cut services, but I've met a lot of people who didn't want to pay for them. And so my hope is that the residents of Oakland, who tend to be enlightened people and who want their community to go forward positively, that they will look at these items on the ballot and realize that we're in desperate need of revenues. And if there's an economic uptick, then we can go in a different direction. But right now it's compelling, and I support it.